England in possession. They haven't had much of this ball
and
at
they
all.
kicked it away again.
Toby Flood
God's
towards...
sake! Send him off! Send the drifting gate off! Get him off the field! That was diabolical!
Wasn't rugby, so we haven't played a game of rugby yet. I think we might have to go out and train after this.
Up and over and bloody head over biscuit.
Very interesting, very good, yeah. Very good. 3 cheers was really bombo. Very good, very good.
Top day.
Yeah, top day, yeah.
Okay, hello and welcome to the Linebreak Rugby podcast. Today you have me, your host Sav. Joining me is Fred and WallopyJoe.
Hello.
Introduce yourselves.
Hello.
Back from the dark ages, back in when we used to record podcasts. I think we should have actually looked this up. I made WallopyJoe look it up, but
No, you didn't.
Well, you said, when did we last podcast? And I said maybe a year ago, and then I thought you were going back through the archives, but
right.
it's been too long. We've got some topics of conversation today for the first time. We actually have a written list and things that we're going to go through. Starting off with Squidge's copyright issues and generally World Cup or World Rugby's relation to, content creators, independent people who decide like us that want to make stuff and not necessarily monetize it, but you can monetize it, but not all the time. What's been? I mean, obviously, I'm not really on Reddit that much. So WallopyJoe, I'm pretty sure you're still on Reddit. Pretty
Surprising.
constant?
I've been extremely inactive the last couple of weeks. But okay. I have. I mean, it is because I'm trying to think how far back it goes. Because he had, certainly around the Six Nations, Squidge nearly had his entire channel taken down.
Yeah, there are a lot of copyright strikes going on then, yeah.
And so, going by what I can read from this, so his video from the Springboks World Cup victory and how they got there, that video is coming down. And as far as I can tell, I don't think it's going back up. But
no, he's. I mean, we could have probably asked him directly.
Yeah.
Someone's echoing.
I was so kind. This would have been the perfect thing for CC to be here because I think he actually has slightly more understanding. But as far as I can get going through the thread, I mean, going through what Squidge himself has put up on Twitter. I mean, I imagine he's fairly devastated that the video is being brought down. But he ends with, hopefully this is the start of a permanent, wider arrangement. And so in the long term, perhaps through this, as shitty as it might be, potentially... Because I know he does do some video content already directly with, or at least for World Rugby. But perhaps...
Yeah, he must be in contact with them.
Yeah.
I mean, that can't be happening otherwise.
Perhaps, as backwards as it might seem at the moment, this could potentially be a case of 1 step backwards, 2 steps forwards, because at the very least, certainly when it has come, I've got very little idea about any other content creators out there, but Squidge has managed to get fairly, heavily on World Rugby's radar. And so, even though this video is being taken down, and I don't know whether it's going back up, the fact that he has been in touch with them and has at least some level of a relationship with them, and he does seem fairly optimistic at the end. He does seem fairly positive that there could be growth going forward. And so if this is... I doubt it'll be a partnership, but if he has slightly more of a wider purview for what he's able to cover... I mean, I know Sands has been pretty shit with him, but...
There's a lot of people out there at the moment that are very annoyed at World Rugby. So we've got... the dead ball area, we've got, I've forgotten his actual name now, I think his name's Graham, and we've got Geraint Davies, who does analysis videos, and some other people who do analysis videos. They're all getting their videos taken down at the moment, and they're all a little bit annoyed by it because obviously Squidge is being engaged with, and all these smaller content creators aren't be. So I think that whilst we can implore Squidge to say, look, you're the big creator in this. He has a big pull.
Yeah.
And I think if he gets his viewpoint across, obviously, then World Rugby might be like, okay, we can see the benefits of all these small creators doing their own thing.
Yeah.
And my comparison in my head, I was going to tweet this, but then CC tweeted something that was just blowing up our phones with notifications, which was very good. It was a very strong set of tweets. My comparison with what was happening to Squidge was more to do with esports.
Yeah.
So esports, the creators of the game sometimes pay people directly to stream and play the game and put up videos.
Yeah.
Rugby's not always in the same level as that sort of thing, because it's actually playing a game and you want people to be in the stadium. So if they're able to view it not being in the stadium, then they see it as not earning money.
Yeah.
But I think there is an aspect of it. You know, I don't think World Rugby is ever going to pay people directly. They are making their own content.
Yeah. I suppose.
But independent creators, I feel like they should be encouraged.
Yeah.
But that's because we are independent creators. So
Well, almost.
in a sense. Well, I continue. CC and I continue to make things, and Fred tweets occasionally.
I don't even think I have access to the Twitter, but I mean, there is. I suppose it depends how far
it's the same
back.
password for everything. Anyway.
How far back that? Don't say that. Edit that out. It's because I'm trying. There was this channel way back a couple of years ago called Rugby 15, and it was genuinely one of my favourite channels on YouTube because it was consistently like 15 to 20 minute long highlights packages of just most international matches and a few high profile club games. And I mean, I don't know whether it was bound to happen eventually, but when it finally got taken down because of however many copyright strikes it got, I just thought it was a massive bummer because the quality of the highlights they were putting out was far and away beyond any of the official channels. And I mean, it's
just nice in HD and quality stuff.
And I can't remember whether there was ever any music attached to any of it, or whether it had comms along with the footage. But aside from the BBC, when they do sort of an extended highlights of a match that's been on Sky, so rather than like a 5 or 10 minutes Six Nations highlight package, it runs for about an hour, and it's got commentary. I can't think of anything that was infringing upon. And the same.
I know what you mean, because they're not interacting in the same sphere. Because it is a replay, and that replay is not readily available.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the thing that has really. I mean, recently they've changed it.
Yeah.
I don't know if Fred's noticed on Twitter. So Sky New Zealand the New Zealand Rugby Union has spent some money and now have some control over the footage of Sky Sports.
Yeah.
And as a result, we are seeing more highlights posted on Twitter and social media and stuff by New Zealand Rugby.
Yeah, I think they've really used the return of the Super Rugby to think, right, okay, we're the only ones doing this. We kind of need to make this a little bit more global. Because when the first couple of games happened, they realised, whoa, actually, it's not just a small island tuning in. It's actually the whole world of rugby going to be watching this.
I mean, I was waking up at 6 a.m. going, I want to watch this, or I was setting an alarm for 4 o'clock and thinking, oh, maybe I'll watch this, and then falling back to sleep. You know, there is an interest globally, and it annoyed me that it took that for them to realise that, oh, maybe we can use this footage rather than just telling everyone to stop putting it on YouTube.
Yeah. Have you, just going back on what WallopyJoe was saying earlier, have you seen the intro, the sort of hype video that they made for Super Rugby Australia?
Oh, that was decent.
I saw everyone panning it.
So it's a perfectly fine hype video, but it's not like it's not incredible. It's not ultra violent like the NRL made. You don't see anyone getting concussed in it, which is really a big difference. But it's not amazing, and you compare it to those channels that we were used to seeing for years. And you go, okay, those were actually better quality. Yeah. And so it makes you think this is the only time when there've been some overlap in this sort of videos. So they could have just benefited, I think, from letting those creators just do stuff. And if you want to protect your copyright, just don't let them make any money on it. There will be loads of 15-year-olds doing amazing videos on the internet that won't be making any money on it.
There's a huge, and this is the thing. So we had a little watch along thing for a brief period of time, And I think that if you decide to set up a system where the money goes straight to the actual owner of the video and you're not monetizing it, then I don't see who's actually benefiting. Like I wouldn't be making any money off it if I created a video that was a hype video, because all the money of the stuff would be going to the actual people who claim it. And as a result, you're just getting free advertising and a creative input. I get that you don't get control over your package, which is what they complain about. But like Fred said, if they're making a hype video that's like average at best, like it's not actually inspiring anyone to tune in, then let people who actually have a passion for it do it. Because that video editor was told to do something, and I don't want to pan someone, it's their job, but they might not have the love and the passion that some 15 to 19-year-old has, because that's like their love at the moment. You know what I mean? That's their drive.
See, maybe I watched something else, but I'm sure I thought that hype video was at least halfway decent, but now I'm not sure.
I saw a lot of people on Twitter. The Twitter sphere was very like, I think it was Rupert Cox from Sky. He was really negative towards it. I think it was him, or it was someone.
Yeah, no, it was 100%. And I think it's just he wasn't. I think he was saying the same thing as me. It's not a terrible video, but it's not the standard that you should get from professionals.
Yeah, fair enough.
And
I was infuriated. Yeah.
And this came out about a week after the NRL one, I think, or maybe 2 weeks after. And I mean, I think about 5 people die in that video, and it still makes you want to watch NRL.
Yeah, it's horrendous, but it's the kind of thing that it's like a blood sport, You can't stop watching that kind of impact, that kind of drama. It's cool. I mean, I've actually been enjoying rugby league quite a lot. I've watched some replays and stuff just for my own fun.
Absolute heretic.
I googled what are the best rugby league games, and I went cool, and then I got hold of them and I watched them, and genuinely was just it was brilliant rugby. It was good fun to watch. Admittedly, obviously it's not the purest rugby union, but somehow we've managed to go from squidge copyright to rugby league.
Which is actually what we want to do.
I do think
that's a weirder tangent than normal.
Well, it's par for the course. I think with regards to squidge though, because if he does, if the legs get chopped out under him, and he gets demonetized or whatever, that basically, as with everyone else, if they aren't getting, certainly I suppose, it's probably different to how it used to be, but I would imagine there's at least, it would have started off as people doing it for fun, but then they get traction and they start getting ad money for it, and then once that ad money suddenly gets taken away, the impetus or the, I don't know, the inclination to actually want to do it dries up completely, and so it's not a sustainable way for World Rugby or anyone really to copyright strike something because they think it's taking away from them, even if it's helping build what they've got. But shit on the little man.
I think it's interesting because we semi-exist in that creator world. I mean, we've done a few videos, not a huge amount, but we've not all of us have moved into separate areas of work. We're all earning money separately, and Squidge is reasonably unique that he is aiming, if not currently doing that, to earn money off doing rugby and comedy kind of analysis combined, which is unique. He is unique in that. And then you've got a different level of people who are not necessarily looking to make money, but they make money as rugby coaches and they want to further education perhaps through analysis videos. And those people getting hit with copyright strikes seems the most counterintuitive thing for World Rugby to do, because they're not looking to put up highlights particularly. They're not looking to... I mean, they could be undermining Sky's job because they do a better job than Sky and BT do during the week. But that's about it. That's the only negative, really.
But arguably they go in way too much detail in for those broadcasters. So I think Sky and BT have people that can go into more detail, but they choose not to because it's not their viewership. The viewership that wants to see ridiculous analysis is not very broad, and that's fair enough. Like, I don't think if
Yeah.
you're Sky or BT, you necessarily want to tap into that market because it's a few thousands of people, whereas you've got
Well, we've
tens of
seen. Yeah.
thousands that are really interested in the. I really like what BT do in BT Tonight, for example, because I
The
think it's
breakdown
probably the
and that.
more,
Yeah.
it's probably the more advanced. There is some like they do show quite a few subtleties of the game without going into too much detail.
They never take it beyond the lay person's kind of idea of it.
Yeah, and they do show some
Yeah.
subtleties as well. They don't just go, Stuart Barnes.
Yeah, they try and do like a dark arts thing without kind of, I don't know, without overkill. You're right, without
Maya
overkill.
sidebar. What exactly has happened to the 1014? Because I know they
Yeah, I was thinking
joined
that.
or went into partnership with Sky New Zealand, but I don't think I've seen any content from them. I mean, I know rugby's not been exactly a bustling business over the last couple of months, but even beside that, when they made their deal,
Yeah.
so much of their content seemed to have just disappeared.
Should
Just
we go
quickly, we'll go on
for?
to that. I think Fred, your mic's picking up your headset.
Ah, it's a bit annoying.
There is an echo.
Should,
Yeah,
should
there is a
we
little echo.
should we go full conspiracy theory on the 1014?
I'm on for the conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. I just made this one up. So it is completely
I'm
a
getting ready to
conspiracy.
tweet.
I would yeah. So you can be pretty sure it's probably not true. But think about it. So if they sign for Sky New Zealand, then they probably have a lot less freedom in what they can say because a massive criticism. I kind of understand a TV channel wanting to have an overview on what's being said.
Yeah, their
And
editorial
then
line or whatever.
exactly, and then if it's not what they want, then it's just not happening.
Yeah.
And I think it's just that.
And
I think it's just
they've
that simple.
decided that they've. But why buy them then? Why
Yeah.
pay them to?
Because it's probably
sit
not
there
very
and
expensive.
not? Yeah,
Two
I
people at
just.
for two people on a salary at the scale of a big TV channel. I mean, it's not that big. It's New Zealand, but
I think, yeah.
it's probably not very expensive.
I've got to be honest. So I know that. Well, I don't know. I know WallopyJoe is a big fan of 1014. Fred, I'm not really 100% on whether you're a huge fan or not. I kind of looked at them as being. It may be unfair to be honest, but they seem to be hunting to become corporate, if that made sense.
I could see
They were quite clear cut. They kind of went, we want to be picked up. They even advertised, we want to be picked up, which was fair enough.
But
but then they did get picked up, and then nothing.
I mean, it
has
could just be
happened.
that they're
So
behind a
what
paywall I
was
don't have
the-
access to, but yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that would have
It
been.
wasn't. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe that would have been hidden. I don't know, but I think their voice was the sort of level of analysis again that can be picked up by big media because they weren't going into a lot of detail actually. It's not.
I kind of thought they
It
were.
didn't feel like. I don't think
they
they
were doing
were,
some-
but it didn't feel like it's not because they didn't know how to, but because they chose a line of we're presenting the teams, we're presenting the player, but there was not much on tactic. There was all on is more revolving around selection.
Yeah,
Maybe.
they love to talk about this is when New Zealand and Ireland made their substitutions. This is the number of times that a hooker was substituted and a second string player was picked. They looked at a lot of that, but they didn't necessarily look at. I mean, obviously they looked at structures. I think attacking structure became
like 1-3-3-1
their
kind of thing. I'm
thing.
sure I remember at least a fair.
Yeah, that. But then, I looked at coaches who kind of dismissed that as being oversimplified. And not necessarily wrong, because that is the structure that you see on the pitch. But I don't know. I'm not 100%. So I think you're right, Fred. I think they chose a level of complexity, and they sat at that level very well and provided a good insight. But they didn't necessarily go crazy in depth.
And I think that's why they got picked
did
up because they did that. They walked the line that was, I think that was quite clever. That was on the right sort of level.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to move us on from the 10-14 and from copyright. I think World Rugby should pick up smaller content creators and should pay us all loads of money.
Absolutely.
Millions minimum.
Should just be, yeah, exactly. We should have a signing on bonus of a couple of mil each. I'm going to bring us on to. It went viral the other day. When actually was your birthday? WallopyJoe's birthday cake. It went pretty viral. It got like over 1,000 upvotes on Reddit.
Does that count as viral?
Well, for a small subreddit, it was like 1.5.
It hit 1089. So it's much to my okay. I don't know what the right word is. Chagrin, maybe. I turned 30 back in June, and in keeping with, I'm never really one for cakes, generally speaking. I mean, I think every birthday for the last 15 or 20 years, I've had a Colin the Caterpillar from M&S. Because what more could you want? That's a solid cake.
But
the last couple of big celebrations in the family, my sisters ordered some fancy cakes, and so for my mum's 60th, the cake had Toby, who's our little Dash and Jack Russell cross. Mum sitting down reading a map because she likes maps, and I think the car she wanted. And for Dad's birthday, he had a boat on his. And my brother's birthday was a great big bottle of tequila or something. And so on my birthday, while I self-isolate alone, I opened the front door to a delivery of a rather large round green cake with a pair of white H sticks stuck in it, and Toby trying to crawl up to the edge of it, and a rugby player diving underneath the posts. I'm sure Sav will put
scoring a beautiful
picture
try.
Somewhere.
I will. We will put the picture. We'll tweet the picture actually alongside the actual podcast.
So that was near enough 3 weeks ago now, roughly. 3 weeks ago and a day maybe.
We can all wish you a late happy birthday.
So I mean the cake itself, it was the amount of fondant on it was quite frankly revolting. That it's just.
Yeah, I'm not a fond
and I
fan.
have the Tri-Scorer and the dog are currently in a small Tupperware in the kitchen.
Oh, were they? So I need to ask: were they plastic figurines or edible?
I think edible might be the wrong word, but
chewable
eatable could potentially be the right. Yeah,
Okay.
in that ballpark. But I wasn't. I'm not entirely sure. I think it's just rock hard icing sugar.
It looked. Okay, it looked like a hell of a cake. There was one of the most impressive rugby cakes I've ever seen. I've not seen many, but that one
the
was
cake
way
itself
up
was also
there.
quite nice. It had in the kind of white frosting in the middle, they had crushed up Oreos, which was quite tasty.
That is fancy.
So it's
only time I've ever been involved in cake making was a wedding, so it's not really my forte.
But I made some very nice cakes at the beginning of the year before the whole lockdown thing started, after I got a recipe visiting relatives. And then I sent another picture in our Slack chat in the cooking channel of the one my sister made me for a birthday 2 years ago, which you might want the recipe for if you have a look at it.
I don't want to betray the Slack chat too much, but I love that your dedication to the separate channels.
Well,
I think
it's mostly just the cooking
just
channel
you.
now, because, Game of Thrones went to shit, Star Wars went to shit, most of the other ones are just a bit inactive. No articles get written, so that one doesn't get used, so it's... But I don't want to...
Or when they do get written, they're written for
it's generally not wanting
to
fill up the general chat with stuff that I don't know.
That isn't general.
All those pictures. That isn't general. That's true. But
I mean, it's something I took.
Right.
It's something I took onto the rugby union Discord as well. It's so.
Well, you're spamming them with cooking.
Yeah, and there's a whole separate channel for Toby and other animals. So it's
Exactly. They're delightful. I drop on. I used to drop in every month, and now I think I drop in every 3 months or something. I've become less frequent resident. I sometimes log in and just see if anyone's atted me, just in case I missed it.
I'll start doing that every now and again to spice things up.
I'm gonna ask Fred a direct question.
Ooh. Put me on the spot.
Because I'm unsure, right, how I feel. So I'm talking about Leicester Tigers and the contracts.
Mm-hmm.
As it stands at the moment, George Ford, Ellis Genge have re-signed, and Tuolangi and I think 5 others haven't. It's either 4 or 6 overall that haven't re-signed. Do you think that Ellis Genge and George Ford should be taking, or I think it's $1 million at least, or $1 million each? They're taking a lot of money. I'm not sure what the actual numbers are, but do you think that they are worth perhaps losing a huge chunk of Leicester's playing base, basically?
I see.
Because and I bring this forward because JB made an awful point, which was a good point because he's an awful person, but it was a good point. He was basically saying they're paying a hell of a lot for 2 players that are always with England, and it's true that they're paying a hell of a lot. It's true that they're mainly with England, but is that because rugby economics are completely out of whack? Like they don't fit with how much clubs earn, and therefore it's just wrong.
Yeah, I think that's the reason. I've seen a question on Reddit, I think, not long ago, where someone was asking, are players overpaid? And one of the answers, which I think was made a lot of sense, was no, they're not overpaid because they are in the current day putting their body on the line in quite a bad way.
Yeah.
And they need that money, and it's not like they're making ridiculous amounts of money for what they're doing. And on the other hand, no clubs are making any money, and some people say that even Exeter, who are officially making money, probably aren't.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They probably are overpaid in terms of the market, not in terms of what they deserve. That's not for me to say what they deserve.
Okay.
I'm just trying to have a look. If you're George Ford, how many England games are you playing every year? Say in a non-World Cup year, you are
12,
probably
13?
I would have said 10 in a non-World Cup.
So there's five for the Six Nations.
2 or 3 in the summer, 3 or 4 in the winter.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're
so
around 11, 10 or 11. Okay, yeah. 12. All right, we'll go 12.
Let's go 12. Right, how many does he play for Leicester in each season?
20, all of them. That he's not playing for England.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's the thing. So he's missing 5. He's missing 7 weeks in the middle of the season, isn't he?
Yeah. So he's
for the Six Nations,
and that's about it, right? He's played 48 times for Leicester in 2.5 seasons.
So he's not doing bad because that's still
he's being overplayed, if nothing else.
Well, that's the thing.
So my point is, he is playing for Leicester more than he is playing for England.
It's
not much more.
Okay, hang on. I just want to quickly Google something because it's vaguely relevant, and it's not that I want to compare the 2 players, but it has struck me as odd every time it's come up or been referred to either on the TV or on Reddit. Richie McCaw played 34 games for Canterbury between 2000 and 2009, and between 2001 and 2015 he played for the Crusaders 145 times. So that is 179 club matches.
Yeah.
For New Zealand under 21, New Zealand and Barbarians
over 4 years,
over a 15-16 year career, he played 155 times. And he's, without getting into too much controversy, potentially, I'm saying potentially because it's not necessarily something I agree with, potentially the best player who's ever played rugby, played 150 games for his country and a very similar number of games for his club.
179.
And as far as I can tell, it's let's quickly go to, I think the one that concerned me at the time, the last time this came up, was Chris Robshaw, who's currently going off to the States.
Oh, his numbers
because
he
played not many games for England because of his age when he was selected. Oh yeah, he played 66 for England, but in 15 seasons he played 250 games for Harlequins.
So what you've drawn upon here would actually make quite an interesting article. That from our perspective, the English non-central contract players are being
absolutely
milked dry. They're being just worked to death, really, because rugby is the sort of game where you are putting yourself in a ridiculous situation
Dan Cole,
a lot of the time, and it can
slightly
impact
fewer
your
years
life.
than Robshaw. He's at 13 years at Leicester Tigers, 234 games for them.
It's mad because you think of McCaw's like whole thing is longevity of his career and being at the top of his game. So what you've got a player that he wasn't even nursed really, because you wouldn't say that McCaw didn't play games. All you've done is you've protected and looked after and made sure that player is at the top of his game for every single game that he steps on that pitch. That's all New Zealand have tried to do. He might have been carrying injuries, he might have been carrying little knocks. Most rugby players are, but he's almost played as many games as Robshaw when you put his two things together. You know what I mean? Like, so he's not, and that's a huge career at the very top level. And that's something that the English system doesn't seem to allow for.
Does it come down to whether, I suppose there are two ways to go in, whether the selection process for the teams that have wider club setups, I don't know, is that just a bit more fickle with what they're able to select? But again, I think Dan Cole himself played like 46 consecutive weeks sometime around between the 2011 World Cup and the 2013 Lions tour, so maybe they want to play that much, so it's
let's get into a dramatic
like,
because you're talking about Dan Cole. Which position do we think experiences the most kind of
probably
stress?
Flanker, to be fair.
You probably flanker because of the breakdown.
Well.
I think props up there. Honestly, I think props up there. Obviously, they've nerfed the scrum.
Well, now they don't
for
have
lack of a better word. If I'm going to use some,
I almost want to say second row actually from playing experience.
Yeah, but how much front row experience do we have in this pod?
I've played a little bit of front row, not very much. So I'm a terrible back, and I find the second row was even worse on the back than the front row.
Okay, see. Now, I've not truly... I've not experienced anything in the front five, and I've barely experienced anything in the back row. But from my vague look at it, there's two situations where you experience like maximum stress. One of them is in the jackal at the breakdown, and the other is in the scrum. And when a scrum goes wrong, which doesn't happen that much anymore, it does seem to be the front rows that come off really badly.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I was more thinking in terms of not when it goes wrong, but rather the attrition from the repeated scrums.
Okay. Yeah.
That's when I think
the constant
front five in general is just harder. I play almost entirely almost only in the back row now, and it is just so much easier physically. You have more to do on the pitch, you have more responsibility. But what you get on your body, the toll of 80 minutes, is nowhere near the same as a front five.
See, that's interesting, and I think what they're doing in Super Rugby actually at the moment. So we talk about whether Genge is worth that contract. Then maybe he is, because the front five is so attritional. I get the second row versus front row, but the front five is so attritional.
And you've seen the World Cup final. I think the main difference, a lot of people have said, ended up being the scrum. And I know it has not been the biggest issue in international rugby. It's not been the biggest sort of test. And teams like Australia have won 2 World Cups without ever being good at the scrum. At the times they won them anyway. Relatively, obviously. They were not actually terrible. Yeah, it's just relatively not as good.
Yeah.
But in this one, we saw the difference. Dan Cole didn't do the job in the World Cup final, and asking a player that's played 1 million games in a row to come in to probably one of the best front rows in the world not at the time he was expecting to be on, and with all the conditions, it's incredibly tough. And
100%. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously Sink's head knock and going off was a big factor.
it
But
was. I think it was a huge
did
factor
prove to be big.
in England. In England not playing so well in the final.
And that's a testament to how important one of the best props in the world is. Really,
I think so. I would
because
agree that
Sinclair is probably one of the best props in the world. He's in the conversation, and as a result of that, we've seen a team that looked so dominant the week before suddenly look not awful, but not good. Not good. Yeah, not particularly good.
absolutely in the conversation. Who is ahead of him? Worldwide.
Furlong.
I don't know who's ahead. I mean, Furlong's in there.
That's pretty much it, right? I mean, obviously there's quite a few. There's
A
quite
lot
a
of the
players.
Kiwis that were in that conversation have retired.
Both South Africans are brilliant.
Yeah.
Malherbe.
Is it Kitsoff and
no, Kitsoff is Luto.
Oh.
It's Vincent Koch.
Well, obviously the Beast has disappeared away.
He's also a loose head, I think.
Beast is, yes, but Vincent Koch and Malherbe are the tight heads.
Oh, Koch was he was a Saracens boy,
Yeah,
isn't he?
he's exceptional.
Yeah. So, we've seen in that moment that the prop has that huge impact. So maybe a player like Genge is worth his weight. And then we talk about the breakdown being taken away a little bit. So there's less impact to the breakdown. There's more penalties, and they're kind of regulating it a bit higher. So has that taken even less strain off the jackal position, and therefore sevens are worth more, but there's less impact, so that they don't get paid as much? Like, what's the defining factor for a contract? Because you can look at George Ford, he's getting paid a huge amount, but that's not exactly a high, I don't know, impact role.
It's a high skill though.
It's a very high skill, yeah.
It might not be that they're potentially not getting through as much work per se if we're speaking strictly the physical aspect of. I mean, though he doesn't shy away from tackles, even if he does get run over.
I'm probably the only person who posts on Twitter repeatedly as a George Ford fan in the way he plays.
He's pretty great, to be fair.
Yeah. But
as I could sidebar again, going back to that rewatch we did of the England Barbarians match, he managed to catch up to Ashton twice, which was fairly impressive.
Yeah, well, Barbarians rewatch was amazing to watch. Ford chasing down what is known as like the winger that did Drew Mitchell on the outside, the winger that doesn't get caught.
Granted, there are 8 years between those two games, so
yeah, obviously, and a winger will lose his speed, but I mean, Ford's not necessarily. He's not Bowden Barrett. He's not known for speed particularly.
Sure, but I mean, going to, I suppose it might be not unfair to compare forwards and backs, but their roles are so fundamentally different, I suppose. Certainly the fly half compared to, props or flankers.
Yeah.
That the role they fill is, I suppose, their different skill set is, who's to say who's worth what? I mean,
I think, and then there's also, the next thing, I will talk about Super Rugby now, because I think it ties in a little. No, I think it ties into what I was just about to say. So Super Rugby for me, there's less breakdowns because they always offload.
Yeah.
They've changed the breakdowns so everybody has a chance to jackal, and there's less flying clear outs and things like that because the refs are a little bit hotter on it. And so is Super Rugby, as we're seeing it now with New Zealand teams, has it become where everybody is a very similar shape? Everybody's kind of a rugby league style shape, shall we say? And therefore the roles are becoming so interchangeable that specialism has kind of drifted away?
My instinct is to say no, but I've not watched enough of it yet to fully commit to that answer.
Okay.
I'd say no to the first one, yes to the second. But
Okay.
I think that's a great thing. Like, more people are encouraged to do more, and we've been looking at old footage. I think it was of Brian Moore? Just
Possibly.
Yeah, just kicking the ball down the field, playing for.
Oh no, it was Keith Wood.
It was Keith Wood. Of course, it was Keith Wood. Sorry.
Oh, what a boot on him!
and it makes you realise that at the time there was probably a little bit more encouragement around just general skill level, and just I think that if your expectation is that your skill level doesn't need to be very high in certain positions, then the reality is your players are not going to have a high skill level in those positions. And if you look at the very top of the level, at the very top of the game, players, like most players, have very high levels of skill all around because they need it.
Yeah.
So I think if your props can pass, catch, kick, then your backs are going to need to bring something different as well. And I think that's great.
It does. The role of the utility player in rugby seems to have gone through a fair few transformations. I feel because it went from being sort of essential when there was one fewer sub on the bench, to slightly more maligned, to becoming a benefit again.
The impact.
Absolutely agree with that.
So we've got.
So it's Hoskins to Tutu,
I think is how you say his name, playing for the Blues at number 8. Has anyone seen him? He's been man of the match for the past.
Is he the one that people are now saying could wind up playing in England because he's got an English ground?
He's got an English. I think he qualifies for England, Fiji, and New Zealand. Yeah. But basically, everybody's talking about him because I don't know if he played at fly half, but he's got all of the skills, like his pass, his textbook, his carry, and he can kick as well. He's a player that has basically the complete skill set and could probably play on the majority of positions. Yeah. But because of his size, he's a number 8.
Yeah. Well, this I suppose comes down to I can only pick on. Well, actually no, I can probably pick on a few more. Tipperick played sevens, didn't he?
Yeah, he's played some club sevens. I've got him down. Yeah.
So he's gone from sevens, is now a very good forward. I know Tom Youngs was a centre. Kyle Sinclair was, I think, a fullback when he first started playing. Before going to centre and then turning out as a prop finally. So there are certainly a plethora of players over the last couple of years who their youth development has had a rather large impact on how good they can be once they've reached the top. Because, I mean, Christ knows about I don't know what Dane Coles was doing, 10, 15 years ago or more, but the type of dynamism that he's brought to the All Blacks as a hooker is quite impressive, considering the more traditional role that a hooker has had. And so you're seeing more of that kind of development in the newer or the younger players, whereby there is a much wider skill set among those where it used to have been quite narrow. So I mean, it's not completely out of the. I mean, it's not quite the Matt Dunnings of the world, but you do now see props with a fairly decent chip. It's not often, but it does happen.
Yeah, there's plenty
and the same goes for some of the loose forwards as well.
You see it more and more.
And so the bigger, I'm sure it is true that it probably slightly more benefits the players that moved from the backs to the forwards, because they'll have the skill set that they had in the backs with the size and grunt that they now carry into the forwards. And so I know Aaron Smith pulled off that absolutely fantastic clear out the other day.
Oh yeah,
yeah, that was great.
And so that kind of skill is fantastic, but I would imagine, probably not set in stone, but it's probably a more noticeable benefit for backs that became forwards rather than forwards who became backs, because I would imagine size forwards more readily have probably benefits a bit more.
And there will be differences, there will be other people, but the only forward that became a back, I think, that I know off the top of my head is Matt Banahan, second row to wing. I can't think of any others.
What about Sam Burgess?
Oh, do you want to talk about Sam Burgess?
Or is that something we don't want to go down?
Forward in league doesn't really count, does it? I mean, and then you...
Yeah.
I thought that. So let's talk about that. You've brought up Sam Burgess. We can bring up the fact that he was on an interview with James Haskell, which is included in our Twitter argument segment, I suppose.
Is it?
So Sam Burgess, for me, I think it was incredibly interesting, the interview. Not necessarily because I won't take everything he said as golden. I don't think I don't think he's trying to mislead anyone particularly. But the way that he's like, I think he said, I don't think I was a 12, I think I was a 6. Like, he agreed with Mike Ford on that respect, but then completely had no respect for him and kind of took George Ford as well down this path that he was being all stroppy and didn't want to play with me kind of deal. I don't like Mike Ford. I don't think that there's many people that do. I'm not sure why I don't like him, but just he seems to have gone to teams, caused a hell of a problem, and then left. Bath was an issue, Toulon, and he seems to be a problem.
You don't need to create problems for too long.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But who accepts a job at a place where is chaos?
A coaching job, especially. I personally, every single time Toulon sign a new coach, I wonder why. I wonder why they've taken the job.
Who has the ego that thinks they can do that?
Because it's such a... I mean, except for the first few that went, oh my god, his name just
who was
disappeared.
Johnny's coach?
He had a few.
No, I mean at Toulon though.
Yeah, he had a few.
Did he have a few there as well?
Yeah.
Was Murad an owner or...
Always been the owner, yeah. Never been the coach. He's got no idea how rugby works. Absolutely not. He doesn't pretend he does, to be fair. But he's got no idea.
He still gets angry at... he got angry at Sevilla, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Very, very angry at Sevilla.
Yeah, in a really stupid way, really.
Yeah, I mean, he only made things worse for that situation, to be honest with you. Sorry, to get back on Sam Burgess for whatever reason. I agree. Obviously, I can't because I've not heard anything on the other side of the story, and I don't think we'll ever hear anything from the Fords because they're not that kind of family, as far as I can tell. Like George Ford, I can't see him releasing a book. Does that make sense?
I suppose.
Yeah. I mean, have you? Surely you've watched the. This is where rugby is actually done really well on YouTube. Was the YouTube series during the World Cup, Rising Sun.
So
I watched bits of it. Yeah.
That was brilliant.
Only bits.
Just watch the whole thing. It's really good. And I think one of the biggest things that I take out of it is how much George Ford talked to the team. You can see that he is very much the second captain in that England team.
He's the driving force.
100%. Even in preparation for a game where he's on the bench, he's talking. He's getting people to do what they need to do. He's preparing, obviously, because backline when he comes on is under his command, so he is very commanding, and also motivating. So it's not everything's not on Faz, even though he clearly does a lot of it. But you can see that he is very, very much a leader in that group.
He takes that role away from Farrell and lets Farrell kind of do the other captaincy bit. So that's interesting. I'd like to see that because George Ford to me strikes me as someone who really doesn't like the media particularly, and he obviously is incredibly driven and has probably modelled a lot of his career on just being a hard worker behind the scenes. Like he wants to almost be Johnny Wilkinson level of obsessed about his craft. And I think him and Farrell, I think that was the reason that Cipriani never got a look in, because those two were so integral to what happens in the team.
Yeah.
So you can't drop either. You can't drop Ford because he takes a lot of the pressure off Farrell. And if anything, I think Cipriani probably put more pressure on Farrell because Farrell would have to play in a more inclusive way. He'd have to be both roles, if that makes sense. He'd have to be the guy who G's people up, and he'd have to be the guy who does the captaincy bit.
Yeah. I suppose I'm sure that opens up another whole boatload of questions trying to remember how well they played going, or how far back you go to when they were playing. Because I remember I think Cipriani had a go in one of the warm-ups before the 2015 World Cup and played really well.
Yeah, possibly.
And he got a couple of shots under Eddie. And I can remember, I think the final test against South Africa in 2018, he made that absolutely mad chip into the corner for May to chase down. And this is almost certainly something out of nothing, but Farrell instantly thought it was the wrong decision, like threw his arms up and looked away, because I think he thought it was going to go out. And so whether that's not trusting that Cipriani's made the right decision
quite out loud,
or what, but I mean, fair play to May for getting to it, because he's pretty awesome that way. But maybe it's maybe he doesn't gel in the team, but considering Farrell and Ford have known each other basically their entire lives, the fact that they have that kind of synergy within the way they play is as much a benefit as it is an eventuality for the types of players that they are.
Yeah.
Team dynamics are massive as well. So you need the right guy in the camp.
Yeah. I think we agree. I don't know if Fred does. We'll finish off. We'll mention. Do you know Ben Darwin on Twitter?
Yeah,
I do not.
Fred does. Yeah.
Aussie guy.
So he loves consistency of team selection, and that'll provide long-term gains. Basically, that's his idea.
Yeah.
Even if you lose in the short term, you'll win in the long term because you're picking the same team that grows together and learns together. And as long as you've got professionals on the pitch, then they're going to get better together.
Yeah.
There's lots of other nuances to it, but that's part of his research.
Main idea, yeah.
And I agree with it. I can't see any flaw with it, especially as I've grown with teams.
There's bound to be some
flaws.
I agree mostly with it, or broadly on it, but there are still moments where...
Well, it's broadly why Barbarians teams don't beat international teams, broadly speaking. That's the reason that it doesn't happen all the time. Obviously, there are exceptions, but... yeah.
But no, as in, I'm thinking, because, there is still bound to be, it's... I'm how to phrase this, because, if you keep the... Shit, how do I want to phrase this? Because the team has to change in some way for new players to come into it.
Yeah,
it's not like
blooding
play
people
everyone,
slowly.
Yeah.
Blooding people slowly is good, yeah.
And that's what we've seen the All Blacks do, where how many times have they brought in a new winger or a new centre or a new back row, and people go like, oh, he's okay, he's pretty good, but he's not quite All Black, he's not quite All Black. And before you know it, he's got 18 caps and starts playing really, really well. And you go, okay, that's why they decided to give him an early shot. Whereas you look at...
a lot of it...
But compare it to an English player. Look at Tom Curry, who's probably, personal opinion, the most talented player I've seen in 10 years. He's on probably 18 caps or something. And he's already... the difference is he's very young, so maybe he couldn't have started earlier. But
yeah,
you have unbelievable players who have a norm, who are around 30 caps, 40 caps, I think, in a team that's really, really planning to blood those players in. They get to that level at 50. So they're actually already in slowly from earlier on.
Yeah, they don't have to contribute solely to the dynamic until they're comfortable almost. They've given a little bit of leeway, a couple of caps, 15 caps maybe, and then they'll start to be the leader in that team.
And it might be because of the smaller player pool, so it's not like there's a lot of things that are different between the two hemispheres, so it's very difficult to compare them.
Yeah. I'm enjoying Super Rugby. We need to wrap it up a little bit.
Yes, someone has to go.
My last question on the agenda, I've actually not got an answer for this myself at the moment. I'm sure I'll come up with one. It's a player that we'd most like to chat or interview with. Someone that I can repeatedly on Twitter.
Oh, right. I took that slightly more literally.
Okay.
I was supposed to be going to a wedding in September, but it's been cancelled, what with the whole world shutting down.
Yeah.
And one of the other attendees was going to be Joe Marchant.
Okay.
So I think there was some talk about fandangling an arrangement of the tables, which I was quite against because I didn't want to get put in that position. But it still would have been quite nice to just sit down and have a chat and see how he's going
That'd be
on, because
quality.
I think I watched his first game for the Blues when he scored his, or I certainly saw his first try for the Blues, so I was quite pleased to wake up for that. But so yeah, certainly, I mean, there are certain players who I've admired for basically my entire rugby watching life. So the likes of, you know, Greenwood and Wilco.
Yeah, I was thinking current, but yeah,
but yeah, Marchant at the moment, just it's how he's done with, you know, Aotearoa, how he's going to be coming back to Quins, and the fact that there is at least some level of, you know, it's is it 1 degree removed or 2 degrees removed? Either way, I know someone that went to uni with him, and so that would have been something entertaining if it had come to fruition.
To be honest with you, his story at the moment is one of the most interesting. Going to Super Rugby and coming back, I think, has been disrupted by, obviously, coronavirus, but I think that was a very good move that people should probably look at as being a nice avenue.
Yeah. So that makes me think we could be looking at that. That would be a really good one to annoy on Twitter to get to talk to us.
Yeah.
So I put one that wouldn't do that. I put Steve Borthwick, and the reason is lineouts.
You just want to chat about lineouts.
Exactly.
You just want to talk about lineouts. Was Steve Borthwick involved in a dynamic lineout though?
Well, the thing with lineouts, so it's my favourite part of rugby as a player, but you can't see it on TV. You don't see enough. I find it really, really hard to try and understand what the different teams are doing. What I see, and it might be because I don't know enough, but what I see on TV is whether they win it or not. And that's about it.
The angles are always a little bit weird, aren't they?
Yeah, so I see if it's straight or not, if they win it or not, if they went front, middle, back, and that's how many they've put in. Sometimes you see teams with some really cool tricks, especially to do with the 9. But that's about it. And so I'd like to have someone that knows it well show some game footage. Because that's something I haven't seen on the internet. I've seen lots of things on what lines the backs are running, how the back rowers are supporting inside, how the backs are kicking. Squidge did some amazing stuff about kicking games, like lengths of kicking games and so on. I've never seen anything about lineouts.
Yeah. No, 100%. And that's something.
See, now I want to know more about lineouts.
Very little.
I'm delighted. It's the best part of rugby. I think sevens is for the backs, and I think forwards should have an equivalent game where it's just lineouts.
5-a-side, 10-metre square. I think that was the three
Rugby
Red Kings
X,
had a
but
chat
with lineouts.
Just lineouts.
Rugby X, but lineouts.
No penalty, lineout. No scrum, lineout.
Lineouts only.
So my one's just come into my head. I was actually going through my mind who I'd actually like to sit down and talk to. I think I'd like to sit down and talk to David Pocock and just see his worldview, actually.
Yeah.
Because he's one of the nicest humans in the world.
Yeah, just to get his view on lots of different aspects that are going on with rugby and what he genuinely sees it as, because obviously he's been involved in loads of weird things. He's had some teammates like Kurtley Beale and Israel Folau and lots of others who either their views are a bit strange, they like to go out and do drugs and party, or they're just generally a little bit disruptive.
Yeah.
James O'Connor and things like that. Quade Cooper. Like, you've got players that are hyper almost and love the attention-ish. And I'd like to just know his kind of view on it all, whether he just thinks that's part and parcel of life, or whether he sees it as being a negative for Australian rugby, or, you know. And also Australian rugby is in a strange place right now, so it'd be
very.
I'd just like to have a chat with him. That'd be quite good.
Brilliant.
So that's the end of the pod as far as I'm concerned. I haven't got anything else.
Awesome.
I know Fred needs to run.
I really need to run
and miss some tennis balls.
All right.
We can talk about Australian football, Aussie rules, in the next podcast.
That'll be a whole different podcast. Yeah.
That's our new podcast coming August 2020.
2021 maybe. We'd have to rename it. Do they have line breaks in the AFL?
No, there's no line.
Oh, shame.
There's no lines. So we're gonna have to change it to something break. I don't know. I'm trying to think of something that breaks. Leg breakers, not really.
No.
What's the funny jump called? The specky.
The specky, yeah.
Yeah, we'll call it the spec. We'll call it the specky then. Done. The specky podcast.
All right, I'm going to stop recording.
The music's now playing. Okay.
Do. I miss that music.
That's good memory.
I don't actually know if I'll be able to find that music again.
It's quite fun.
Somewhere on this.
I every now and again, just going through YouTube, I start noticing it in videos I'm listening to.
Oh yeah, because it's the royalty-free music, so everyone uses it. Yeah.